Hey y'all, welcome back to this week's episode of AMA Friday with Amy Miller, Recruiting in Yoga Pants. So this week we are kicking off our new little mini-series on high volume hiring. What is it? What is it not? How do recruiters do it? Lots to come. So this week we're just going to do a very quick intro overview of high volume hiring. It comes in many forms. There is no single one-size-fits-all to this, but I want to try to cover as best I can some of the different versions or things that you might see out in the job search wild. And then in coming weeks, I'm actually going to start digging into my high volume hiring experience. So I'm actually doing this work right now. So I've talked about this a little bit on LinkedIn, and I thought it might be kind of fun for me to share with you almost kind of a live play-by-play of how this is unfolding in my job. I don't talk much about my day job necessarily. I don't name names or, kind of merge those two worlds very often, but I think this might be kind of cool, and I can certainly make the content general enough that I'm not breaking any rules or drawing too much attention to my day job. All right. So what is high volume hiring? Well, good news. We've kind of talked about it a little bit in a previous video. So we had a conversation just a few weeks ago about fungible versus niche hiring. So if you have not seen that video, might be worth checking out, might be a good intro to this intro for what exactly high volume hiring is. Fungible roles can be hired through kind of a high volume model. Now, what I find interesting about this conversation, and part of what kind of sparked this discussion and why I wanted to talk through it, is there's definitely some interesting perspectives out there in job search land about what is high volume. And in particular, a couple people, I saw one post, I saw a bunch of supportive comments, I saw a lot of confusion and uncertainty about what y'all are talking about. I find it fascinating, and I think, well, first of all, let me tell you what was said. It's not a direct quote, I'm probably going to screw this up, but essentially the takeaway of this message was high volume means low quality. Which I find fascinating. Now, in fairness, I think the unsaid part was low quality candidate experience. I think that's where this person was maybe trying to go. Not necessarily low quality talent, because that would not be fair either. Both of those things are not true, in case y'all were curious. Anybody can provide a bad candidate experience. It's not exclusive to high volume hiring, I promise you. But we can definitely do things, and that's what we're going to talk about in future weeks, is what are some of those mechanisms and just kind of reminders and good uses of automation as well to make sure that we are having a quality candidate experience. That's very, very important. And I think I'm not going to say it's more important in high volume, but I will tell you in high volume, people talk. People talk a lot to a lot of people. Okay. It's not just one guy had a bad day with Amy. It's Amy really screwed up the last 100 people she talked to. So volume also comes with a lot of visibility. So we want to be very careful with that experience. So no, high volume does not mean low quality. And if you think that, pull up a chair because you need to take a seat. Okay. So high volume, what does that look like? How can a job seeker know, or if they're applying to a high volume role, or if they're maybe qualified for high volume type of hiring? Y'all, I need you to understand, this looks so different depending on the industry, depending on the role scope, depending on the company. Geography plays a part here. Tourism, for example. There are going to be hotspots that hire a lot during certain times of the year. Winter at the ski resort, okay? People don't work at the ski resort typically year round. They close, right, in the summer. But there's going to be a high volume hiring push seasonally based on that tourism demand. Retail. We see a big push in temporary, short-term, seasonal workers. That could be warehouses, that could be delivery drivers, that could be people, baking wedding cakes. It could be any number of things. So again, that's another way high volume hiring can happen. Round the clock, 24/7 volume staffing. We see this in healthcare sometimes, right? With support staff or travel nurses or things like that. We see that call centers is another great example. Anywhere that has like a high attrition rate. Entry-level sales is another one that has high attrition. So you could have a team of recruiters who just completely focus on month over month, fill in those classes, fill in those new trainee classes, fill in those call center seats, and so that's another kind of constant high volume hiring problem that we're looking to solve. Peak seasons, I already talked seasonal, I think I've covered that. So there's lots of different ways that this can happen. We won't belabor that too much more. Hopefully I've made my point there. But there's a lot of ways high volume can show up. Now, I want to say this is not exclusive to unskilled labor, entry-level roles, things like that. A lot of the assumptions also, from those that don't know what they're talking about sometimes, a lot of the assumption is, that's just for, people who don't have skills or people who, can't get real jobs. I've heard some really nasty stuff said, and not from recruiters, by the way, but anyway, another time. I've seen some really interesting spins on this, which does not actually play out in reality for the most part, in my experience. I'll give you an example. Hiring events. I had multiple hiring events when I was at Microsoft, and we were focused on hiring junior software engineers. These are highly skilled people, almost always had a degree, few years of experience under their belt, not college hires. There was a whole team that did campus hiring. That was not us. But we would say, gosh, we need to hire, 20, 30 SDEs, and we need to hire them every month for the next, however ramp up period. We're building this new project or launching this new team or whatever we're doing. And so we would do these hiring events where we would bring in 10, 15, 20, 30 people and interview them all in the same day. And so you have like this massive event happening, and interviewers are running from room to room and doing all the different interviews. And then we would have a debrief the next day and talk through all the great people we met and review our notes and start figuring out who wants to make an offer, what team wants to make the offer, things like that. And so that is another example of high volume hiring at scale that was not low quality, I promise you. Neither the candidate nor the process was low quality. That's very important. So getting this experience right is critical. That's one of the things we're going to dig into a lot next week. I want to start by focusing on how do I build the strategy? So some questions to ask yourself if you're a recruiter, some landmines to avoid, some things to think about. I'll build out a little bit of a roadmap for you, hopefully, and also just walk you through what I'm currently doing as I'm building out a high volume hiring strategy for my team. So should be an interesting few weeks, y'all. I hope that y'all get some goodness out of it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Comment down below any questions that you might have, any thoughts on this intro, or anything that you want to hear us talk about in the coming weeks. I would love to hear your feedback. And as always, see you next week.